everyone. Welcome everyone that is joining live, and welcome everyone who is watching this as a recording later on. I'm Cheryl Brickey of Meadow Mist Designs, and I am so excited to have been invited onto the Annie's page and share all about Hasker triangles today. So I just want to take a few minutes while people are joining to kind of give you a little background about myself. I'm coming to you live from South Carolina, just outside of Greenville. So we're kind of in the foothills. Fall is just kind of starting. We're getting some cooler nights. It's still getting up into the 70s during the day, which is pretty nice. And we have a nice full sunny day. We've been getting a couple rainy days, so today is really nice to be sunny. I have been quilting and designing under my brand Meadow Mist Designs for a little over a decade now. I specialize in kind of twists off and modernizing some classic quilt designs. I love strong, bold shapes and bringing them to you guys as quilt patterns. I'm a chemical engineer by training, and by day I also write patent applications for a private textile company. So I like to joke that even when I am not playing with fabric and cutting and sewing it, I'm writing and describing it in patent. So if you guys, I am watching the feed, so if you do have any questions, please pop them in there and I will try to respond while I'm introducing myself. I am a relatively new designer for Annie's. I have myself been designing, once again, for about 10 years. I do have 2 books out. One was Modern Plus Sign Quilts, came out a couple years ago under the Stash C&T label. And then just in June, I had my second book called Just One Charm Pack Quilts come out, once again from Stash and C&T. So I'm excited. And one of my favorite blocks, and what I'm going to be talking to you guys about today, is Hasker triangles. They are literally my favorite block. I love designing with them. I love making them. In fact, the last quilt I made, I think, had over 300 of them. And for me, it just, I get in a rhythm and I start making them and trimming them kind of assembly line style. And they're just my favorite block. So I'm going to show you some of my tips for making thousands upon thousands of Hasker triangles and hopefully make your Hasker triangles more fun, easier, and more accurate. So behind me is one of 2 quilts that I have through Annie's that focuses on Hasker triangles. This is called Arrow Point Path, and it's kind of if you zoom out, it's hard to zoom out in my small room here. It's a really fun kind of graphic design. This is one of my favorite quilts. There's so many quilts in this world to make that I don't typically make the same quilt more than once or twice. But I made this quilt 4 times. So this was the original, and it has all blues and some green solid. These were all Michael Miller solids. I made another version of some really old Denise Schmidt Chicopee, if anyone remembers that collection. I had a couple charm packs from that, and I used that. I made a baby quilt. The background was blue, like a light blue, and then all of these prints where the blues were all black and white prints, which was super fun. And then finally I made a twin size that had a gray background that had all sorts of yellows and blues and turquoises. So I've had fun making each one. It's a pretty quick quilt that comes together. Not too many seams to match, which is always nice. So this is one that uses Hasker triangles. And then the other quilt pattern that Annie's carries of mine, once again, Meadow Mist Designs, is called Bear Hugs. I don't actually have that quilt anymore. To describe it, it is in the link if you look here for the live event. It's a bear claw quilt, so it's the traditional bear paw or bear claw, forget which block. It's made all sorts of scrappy, and they're offset. It's a lot of fun. I don't do scrappy too much. but I can do scrappy in a very controlled way. So they're all sorts of pinks. It helped me clear out my my pink scrap bin, and I had since gifted that quilt, since it was pink, to a friend that was undergoing breast cancer treatment. So that quilt unfortunately does not live with me anymore, but it went to a really good home, so I can't show you that one today. So those are the two quilts, and you know, there's thousands of other ones that use half square triangles. So let's get to it. I'm going to reposition the camera. I apologize for my setup, and focus down, and I'm going to show you some tips. Okay. And there we go. Okay, so when you're making half square triangles, this is my sad half square triangle, and I should put it like this. If you go and make a traditional half square triangle, sometimes when you're trying to press open and you get these little tiny things and you're pushing them, you wind up pushing the corners. And as you can see, it's hard to see, but this is not laying flat. When I try to lay this one flat, this is all sorts of puckered. And using a ruler, it's kind of all curvy. And so when your block is curvy like that and you're trying to go and square it and make it into a quilt, you're always going to usually wind up with a point. You know, the point might be perfect on one side, and then you might have this gap on the other. And I think the first thing of getting half square triangles to look good in your quilt is to get really nice, accurate ones that are all the same size, having the points right in the corners. That makes the assembly of the quilt so much easier. So this is what we want to avoid. This is the unhappy kind of half square triangle. So this is how I do my half square triangles. So just the general rule, if you were to make a half square triangle, your finished square is exactly, if you sew it absolutely perfectly, 7/8 of an inch smaller. I will tell you, when I make my half square triangles, when I write patterns, I don't say use a 4 7/8 inch square to make a 4-inch finished piece in the quilt. It'll wind up as 4.5, and then it'll go down to 4. I use 5 inches. And if I need to sew really quickly, I might even go up to 5 1/8 or even 5 1/4. Just because the faster you go, a little less accurate, it gives you more room to get it right and to trim. So the first thing I do is, this is just a charm square I have. So this is 5 inches. And this will be my, my second fabric. So what I do is I mark a diagonal line. Let's make sure that you can see this. There we go. From corner to corner. I'm just using a cheapy little mechanical pencil. I find that it gives a nice little line. It goes away in the wash. And it's, you know, ones that aren't, they tend to dull and they make a really fat line. You can also, if you prefer, you can use any of, you know, your standard ones. This is water soluble, air soluble. I find the air soluble ones, I wouldn't mark too many at a time, because they do sometimes, especially in the humid summer, the line disappears. So as you can see, it's just faint. It just has to be enough for you to see. There are tons, there are hundreds of probably gadgets. There's different tapes you can put on your machine. There's different templates. There's all sorts of ways. I've tried a number of them, and honestly, I find, I know it's marking each one, but I find that this just gives me the most accurate results, and it really doesn't take too much time. So after I do that, I put them together. So these are right sides together. Obviously with the solid, it doesn't have a right and a wrong side. And I go to my machine and I stitch a scant 1/4 inch on either side. Now a scant quarter is just basically a thread width smaller than a 1/4 inch. If you used a full quarter, it still would work too. So after I sew it, here's the magic of thing. Bam, here we go. So I'm going to hold this. Ooh, let me actually hold it up so there we can see it. There's the line and the 2 lines of stitching in gray. So normally what you would do now is you'd take your ruler, you'd put it on your line, you'd cut these, and then you'd press them open. And that's how this one was done. And now I'm going to mimic this with my iron. Now my iron, as you can see, is not plugged in. So, public service announcement, you never, ever, ever want to iron on this with a warm iron, hot iron, or anything. This is literally, just because my setup does not allow me to go and keep switching places, I'm just going to mimic it. But once again, this iron is off. See, off. So, as you go, and when you're trying to get these little things, you see how you're kind of, I don't know, I wind up pushing it a little bit and it distorts the fabric. So, this tip I'm going to tell you has changed my half square triangle making, and it was introduced to me by my co-author of Modern Plus Sign Quilts, and that is Paige Alexander, and she blogs at Quilted Blooms. So what it is while this is still here, so while this is all still together, I flip it over and I iron. I set this down. I iron this side, I flip it over, and then I iron this side. And because this is all still all attached, you don't wind up getting the stretching and, whoop, here we are, I'm trying to find the camera, the stretching and the pulling and the distorting. So when you're done, it's just gonna kind of look, as you can see, it's just a little bit. It's basically, you're kind of pre-folding the fabric. So after you press the first time, then you take your, and you cut, and now when you open it up, it's basically will lie almost right. And then you want to make sure that you're not sitting there ironing. You just want to go and you want to just press. Obviously this is not going to work because this is a cold iron. So I have some here. And then you get this nice straight line. See that? Nice and straight. And that's your first step to success. And so this does add an extra little step because you're ironing, you're pressing, then you're cutting, then you're pressing again. So you are introducing another step. But you can see now, here's my ruler and it goes right up against that. And that is just going to make sure that all of your blocks are really nice. So the next tip I have is, once again, since I might oversize, is I trim down to size. And there are plenty of gadgets you can use. There's specialty rulers, there's rotating mats. All of those will help you. To trim your half square triangle though, all you need is a ruler that has a 45-degree angle. And I know that Annie's carries Creative Grids rulers, which I really like. And you can probably see those with the reflection. It's hard. I have a 45-degree here, I have another one here, and I have another one here. So I'm going to take this one on the end and line it up. And I'm going to cut off the least amount I can off of these two sides, keeping that line right on my seam, the least amount. So I trim the one side, I trim the second side, take those off. And so two of them are like that, and you can see, whoop, where are we? There we are. Let's try to focus. I apologize. The live is difficult with equipment, but you can see that the point is right there on that nice corner. So then I turn it around. I line up my 45-degree angle with my seam line. I put it right at 4.5 inches. So we started with a 5-inch piece of fabric. It's going to be 4.5 inches as a half square triangle, and it's going to wind up as 4 inches in the finished quilt. So then I trim these remaining two sides. And there we have it. So here are your 2 points, which are just, they're perfect in those corners. The block is laying nice and flat. This line is nice and straight. And honestly, if you can get to this and you can have all of these being the same size and all of them being accurate at the corners, if you sew your blocks together with a consistent seam, a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch, without much trouble, most of your seams are going to match, which is just, I think, really, really great. So that is my tip. I ask you to try it. If you do try it and you like it, leave me a comment on on this. Let me know if it was helpful. It really has increased my accuracy, is just that trimming down and the special Paige Alexander pressing tip. You press, then you cut, and then you press again. So just one extra press, and you wind up, instead of having, you know, sad half-square triangles, you have beautiful half-square triangles. So I am just going to try to get my thing to stand up again. Here we go. Sorry. There we go. So, I hope that you loved that. I mean, it is super simple, but it is such a game changer. And, you know, it just gets you the points without having to futz with it and everything. And really, if you find your half square triangles aren't quite large enough to do all the trimming you need, there's nothing wrong with increasing them an extra 1/8 of an inch. It's really not going to use that much more fabric. And for me, when I have to start combining blocks and they're not quite matching and the line, it's very stressful. So if you can get all your half square triangles piled up, beautiful, ready to go, it will make your quilt tops come together so much easier, happier, and quicker. So if anyone has any questions, let me know. Otherwise, once again, thank you, Annie's, for having me here. I am so excited to be involved with the company and have my patterns represented in it's such a wonderful catalog. And I hope that you check out Arrow Point Path and Bear Hugs, those two quilts that use half square triangles. And there's a number of others I have. There's 5 total. There's 2. One's called Spinning Stars. One's called Use Your Illusion. Those are both paper pieced. And now the 5th one is eluding me. I can't remember the 5th one. I apologize. I had it written down and I'm live, so now it's blank. But if you go into Annie's and you search for Meadow Mist Designs or Cheryl Brickey, you can find my designs and give them a whirl. So thank you again. And if you want to find me on all social media, I am Meadow Mist Designs. So on Instagram, on Facebook, my blog, just search Meadow Mist Designs and you can find me. So thank you again, and thanks.